He hears the silence. He sees the darkness. He's the only one that can stop the killing. Of course, we're talking about Chuck Norris, of course. Welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to another Martial Arts Monday, and welcome to Norris November Part 2. Last year, I reviewed and ranked 10 Chuck Norris films for the month of November, and this year I'm doing the same. I was kind of inspired to do that by a few other YouTubers who did some Norris November content, including Horrific Nightmares JM and the Horror Man, who did a ranking of Chuck Norris films a while back. Last year, I had a live stream where I ranked the 10 films that I did last year, or watched and reviewed last year. What I'm going to do this year, I'm just going to make an Instagram post today, which will summarize the first 10, and then as I review the next 10, I will sort of insert them into the ranking of what will become 20 Chuck Norris films. That's the goal. Anyway, so today we're going to get started off with a double review, since they're both fresh in my mind. They're both on Tubi, and they're both sort of from the late 70s, early 80s, I believe. We're going to start off with A Force of One, okay? Yeah, I watched both of these films last year, and I rewatched them this year. And I have to say, this one really stood up quite well. You know, some films, upon repeated viewings, they might slip just a little bit. This one really held up well. A Force of One is from 1979, rated PG, an hour and 30 minutes. Directed by Paul Aaron. Chuck Norris plays a martial arts instructor. That's a stretch. And I'll use the term, I'm going to use the term karate, you know, and I know Chuck's background might not be purely karate, and people get wrapped around the axle with terminology, but they use the word karate in the movie a lot, okay? So that's what I'm going to use.
Martial arts, hand-to-hand combat. Somebody who could kill with their bare hands and not leave a mark, huh?
She's got some, Lieutenant. Maybe it's one of them karate weirdos like in the movies.
And I believe he was the form of fighting that you see in the film, in the ring, would be known as like a point karate fighting, or possibly full contact. I'm not 100% sure. But yeah, he plays a karate instructor who ends up helping the police. And the police are played by, you've got Clu Gulager as the police chief. Jennifer O'Neill plays an officer. She's very good in this. She's got short hair. Just very capable. A very strong character. And then you got Ron O'Neill. Always great to see him in anything, really. He's fantastic. Pepe Serna, who was in Buckaroo Banzai and just dozens of films. And then you also have the fighters in the martial arts world. You got Chuck and his secretary, who I think he calls Harry from, I think her name's Harriet, but he calls her Harry, which is kind of funny. They've got a good rapport, always kind of teasing each other. She's always eating snacks for some reason. He's got an adopted son who's working out and has dreams of being a professional fighter. And then you've got just the back and forth between some of the other fighters, even the rivals. You know, they're just kind of messing with each other, challenging each other. And the film actually stars Bill Superfoot Wallace as one of the other fighters. And if you don't know who he is, he was a big deal in the world of martial arts. I believe he fought in point karate fighting, perhaps full contact as well. And I did read on IMDb that he did lose a testicle after getting hit in the groin during a fight. So, ouch. Yeah, he plays a really good character in this. He's a little bit bigger than Chuck and pretty muscle bound, and he was, his nickname was Superfoot. He had a couple kicks that were just very quick, and he used them to good effect. You can look up his record on the internet and see what I mean. So he's very good. He would also eventually go on to be the commentator for at least the first UFC event. So yeah, just a well-respected guy in the world of martial arts, and I believe he's still with us today. Chuck initially is a little hesitant because he's actually very busy training for a very important fight. He's going to fight the winner of a Superfoot Wallace fight and somebody else. He's ringside for that, so we get to see that fight. And all the ring fights, the fights in the ring, look very good, very well choreographed. As a matter of fact, there's some clips on Instagram of when Chuck finally gets in the ring with Bill Superfoot Wallace. I don't think you're surprised by that, that would happen in a movie where they're both in it. A lot of people there are clips of that on Instagram. A lot of people seem to think that was from a real fight, but apparently that was just for the film. So that's how good the choreography looks. You kind of would expect it, considering the talent involved here. So he's skeptical, but then he sort of goes on a ride along with Jennifer O'Neill's character, Officer Rust, and he sees the horrible side effects of people being addicted to drugs. Some guy comes in who's like a supplier of a young girl and pulls a switchblade on Chuck or something like that. Chuck kicks his ass, of course. And Chuck's backstory is that he had a girlfriend who died, and he is now raising an adopted son who trains with him in the dojo and everything. So eventually he agrees to help the cops. And this movie is very much a product of its time. This came as the sort of karate and martial arts fascination fad of the 70s was still going. You know, this is like 4 years after Bruce Lee has left the earth. It's still going pretty strong. So the movie is explaining sort of martial arts to the audience the way, you know, through Chuck explaining it to the cops. So the cops, you know, go to his dojo. And what I like about it is it's not, you know, he's not training them to be fighters. He's teaching them practical real world applications. So he gives them some fake weapons and shows them how to disarm and everything. And they're kind of messing with each other. Like, you're not going to take me down. And, you know, they try to take each other down. And so it's like real life applications. Well, eventually the cops have some more roadblocks, and we learn that our villain is kind of a low-profile guy. He's a business owner, and it's kind of cool that he's not like, you know, a corrupt politician, or he's not in charge of a multinational corporation or something. He keeps a low profile. He's got these young kids on skateboards that he uses as couriers. Again, skateboarding also pretty faddish in the 70s. And eventually they kind of figure this out, and they kind of narrow in on the martial artists who is helping them. Because Chuck, you know, there's only so many of these guys in town that are that skilled. So Chuck starts to make a list of them. His son kind of gets involved. There are some horrible setbacks and people die. And then there's a confrontation at the end. And it's actually just wrapped up very nicely. You know, maybe somebody on the police department isn't who they seem to be, and somebody in the fight world isn't who they seem to be. I don't know. But it's a very satisfying film. Good action in the ring and out of the ring. Good action all around. You know, just well choreographed fights. This is really good, solid Chuck Norris action. I mean, and it's well paced too, I will have to say. So, how would I rank this one? I'm going to say this is now my 6th favorite Chuck Norris movie, right behind Forced Vengeance and right in front of The Octagon. So, pretty solid entry for sure. Now let's go on to the next film, An Eye for an Eye. And boy, do I remember the marketing campaign for this one. I just sticks out in my head. This one and Good Guys Wear Black. I just remember the advertising for these and how bad I wanted to see them in the theater. Now, here's the difference between this one and A Force of One. That was 1 hour and 30 minutes. This one's 1 hour and 46 minutes. And there's just something, this one just doesn't seem to flow as well. Doesn't seem to be as paced as well. 1981, rated R. This one's a little more violent, especially right off the bat in the beginning. Chuck Norris plays a police officer in this one. His partner is Terry Kaiser, who meets a pretty horrific end right in the beginning of the film. So this one is directed by Steve Carver. And this time you have Richard Roundtree playing the police captain. You also have Matt Clark as a sort of someone who appears to be like a sympathetic person on the police force for Chuck after Chuck turns in his badge because of the events that happened in the beginning of the film. I mean, what can you say about Matt Clark? Very recognizable. I mean, he was in films with Burt Reynolds, Clint Eastwood, just tons of films. And then you have Rosalind Chow plays a reporter who works for a media company owned by Morgan Canfield, who's played by the great Christopher Lee. Okay, so I mean, I'm not really going to spoil anything if I tell you that he's going to be the villain, am I? And as one of his henchmen, you have the Professor Toru Tanaka, okay? Wearing platform shoes. We'll get to that in a moment. And then you also have Mako playing James Chan, the father of Rosalind Chow's character. And he's essentially Chuck's mentor and instructor. So they actually have a lot of sort of action scenes together. And he's constantly criticizing Chuck's technique. You know, who doesn't love Mako? I mean, what can you say? Conan the Barbarian. I mean, just the Big Brawl with Jackie Chan. He was on Martial Law with Sammo Hung. Just a legendary actor. So after the death of Chuck's partner and he quits the force, his now widow is continuing some kind of investigation into drug trafficking, and she gets a hold of a incriminating conversation amongst somebody, and she hides the tape in a train station locker room and stashes the key somewhere. Eventually, Chuck works with and has a romance with her upstairs neighbor, who's also works for the same newspaper, and he goes to the station to try to get some clues. And then Christopher Lee just basically introduces himself. So they come up to the office and chit chat. So they have a really good conversation. The movie's set in San Francisco, by the way. So there's a really cool shot as Christopher Lee's pouring a drink of Alcatraz out the window. And I have to say, I do like the fact that they didn't bombard you with the Golden Gate Bridge, like we like a lot of movies do that are set in San Francisco. But Chuck he's in and around the water quite a bit in the film. And he basically tries to close in on this sort of operation. Meanwhile, Richard Roundtree is very sort of upset with him because of what happened in the beginning of the film. He's kind of coming across as a jerk. Will they be able to work together by the end of the film? I don't know. The professor, Toru Tanaka, is chasing after first Rosalind Chow's character and then Chuck and the other reporter throughout much of the film, throwing people out of the way, lifting up Volkswagen bugs, and just being an overall menace. I have to say, the decision to put him in these platform shoes, though, although at the end it looked like he was wearing one. There's a scene where at the end where his feet are up, and it's like, why is he only wearing one? Unless I missed something. They did that to make him look taller. Originally, they had an idea of getting maybe Andre the Giant for this role, and they were a little hesitant because the professor was despite being big and burly, he was 5'11". I mean, I really think they just should have done without the platform shoes. I mean, it made him walk funny and run even funnier. Like it wasn't very convincing that he would be catching up with anybody. So at the end, Chuck has to go up against him, and there's some really well choreographed kicks. Of course, it's not surprising. It's a Chuck movie. Overall, it just seemed like, I guess I'll just say it should have been better somehow. You got Mako, Christopher Lee. You had all the ingredients. It didn't just come together the way A Force of One did. It was still pretty good. I just wanted maybe a little more, a little more out of Christopher Lee, a little more between Mako and Chuck, although some of their back and forth is pretty entertaining. I don't know. Maybe just a little bit too long or something. It just didn't quite gel together. Having said that, this film is now my 8th favorite Chuck movie. I'm going to say this one's going to go behind the Octagon, but before Hero and the Terror. So right in there, number 8. Still not bad at all. And an entertaining movie to watch if you haven't seen it. So that's 2 Chuck Norris reviews down, and come back again next Monday for another martial arts-oriented Chuck review. And even throughout the week, if the films have less martial arts but a little bit more action, I'll just review them whenever I get the chance during the month of November. So come back again soon. Thanks a lot. Later.